Hi, everyone, and welcome back to Erasing the Stigma. Today, I have a very special episode because we are getting towards the end of October, but it's still Dyslexia Awareness Month. And here at Color and Confidence, we are still definitely celebrating Dyslexia Awareness Month. So today is a super fun episode. So I am here with an artist in residence in the Computational Neuroscience Initiative at the University of Pennsylvania and a professor emerita at the Northern Virginia Community College, Miss Rebecca Kamen. And if you've seen one of my previous episodes, you will recognize Miss Kamen's face because she was so kind to come on again. And Miss Kamen has a very cool art exhibition that is going on show in San Francisco in a week from today, actually. So we are going to be discussing her artistic process and this very amazing exhibition that she's a part of. So thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you. It's really exciting to be here.
I'm so glad to have you. So you have a very cool presentation that you're going to share with us today. If you want to give like a rundown before the presentation, or if you want to jump into the presentation, it's totally up to you.
Well, first of all, what I'd like to say is because of when I was a student, the word dyslexia wasn't even in the dictionary. Well, it might have been in the dictionary, but it was something that wasn't recognized. And I just assumed, and because of my age, which was pre-computer, I just assumed everyone struggled with reading the same way I did. I also had a lot of trouble getting into college, even though I always wanted to teach. And I had wonderful parents who were advocates for me. And it wasn't until I was a college professor myself that a dear friend of mine who was a special ed teacher at the University of Maryland said to me, I think you might be dyslexic. And everything made perfect sense once I started reading about it and understanding it and the struggles that I had as a student. And what I'm really excited about is how in the 21st century and now with computers, there's this real excitement about what dyslexic people get to bring to the dialogue. And what's really exciting to me is what originally seemed to be something that was a crisis became a beautiful opportunity. And really, I believe, was responsible for the decision to go into art and art education as a student, because as I mentioned in your other program, it was the only major where I didn't have to take mathematics. And if you think I was struggling with reading, you should have seen what I was doing with numbers. And so I'm here today as an adult and telling everyone out in this audience that if you learn differently, what we call neurodiversity, that's a superpower. It certainly has been in my life and my career, and it has enabled me to share this with other people. And so when I received this invitation from two curators out in San Francisco last spring, I just jumped on it because one of my gifts that I came into the world with is I'm a very curious person. And I think that might be something that is a result of dyslexia, how my brain is wired. I need to understand how everything works in the universe. And so when someone extends an invitation to me, would you like to be part of an exhibition that showcases your unique superpower of being dyslexic? I jumped on it. I had no idea what I was going to do. And it was just a wonderful opportunity with two people. One who was a poet in residence, she is one of the curators. And then the other person is a dyslexic graphic designer. And they have been so wonderful to work with. And I'm very interested because of research that I do at the University of Pennsylvania with knowledge networking, is I got to work with a doctoral student, Dale Joe, who I've worked with before on a component for this exhibition, which I'll be sharing with the audience shortly. So I think with that, I'm going to share my screen.
And I'm so excited to see your presentation that you are going to show. But thank you so much for giving that little rundown about how you got involved in this project, because I really think that you are a great example for everyone, for me and my audience, of how with dyslexia you can pivot within your struggles to kind of form a new path for yourself. And it's inspirational to me how you were able to go from someone who struggled to getting into college because of your dyslexia to someone who is an artist who is renowned and being offered or invited to come to this exhibition and share your art to a large scale audience. So it's really amazing hearing your story.
Well, thank you so much. And I just want to say for anyone in the audience who's not familiar with my art practice, I always came into the world wanting to be a scientist, but during the time I came through the educational system, because I had learning challenges, which were undiagnosed at the time, that was never going to be a career path for me. But now, as an artist, my work explores the intersections of art and science. And so what I tell scientists, and I lecture to scientists all over the world, from astrophysicists to neuroscientists to climate people. And what I say to them is it's my curiosity that has enabled me to learn and to discover all the secrets of science. And so I get to do science on my own terms. And for me, I always feel like Alice in Wonderland as I fall through the rabbit hole of eternal possibility. And so when this group reached out to me, I thought, wow, this is exciting. I've never really done artwork that focused specifically on my experience with dyslexia. And at first I wasn't sure how I was going to, navigate through coming up with ideas. But what I'm doing today is I want to share with you my process of discovery, because I'm so excited about it. And for anyone in the audience who's dyslexic and really struggling, I want you to know you have superpowers. You get to see the world as a visual learner, which is what my project is about. And what's exciting to me is working with a neuroscientist who is really able to help me translate what I wanted to do has been so exciting. So I'm a huge collaborator and I learn a lot. And I think part of that's the dyslexia as well. If I'm studying something like, say, the periodic table, I'm interpreting it through sculpture, I'm interpreting through sound, through dance, because as a dyslexic person, we're very visual. And so the more stimulation I feel, the greater the reward of knowing. So anyway, I want to start this presentation with this image. This was created by Gil Gashoni, who is one of the curators, and it's his company, the graphic design company, that is one of the sponsors of this exhibition. And I taught design for 35 years on the college level. So I look at this, and yes, when I'm reading a book, this is what it looks like sometimes. And I'm sure some of the audience feels the same way. And I love that they use that graphic image to advertise this exhibition, because anyone who's dyslexic seeing this understands what it's about.
Yeah.
So they came up with this notion of dyslexic dictionary. And as you can see here, it's about an invitation to explore and redefine. And so 9 artists were commissioned to produce a creative response, either to a word, to a book, to a poem, to highlight how our minds experience language. And this has been really helpful for me, because I do a lot of public speaking and I love doing that, but reading is really a challenge, and it still is. Even though I do research in scientific special collections all over the world, I don't sit down and read for pleasure. So this invitation was so exciting to me to really use it as an opportunity to understand and process the way I learn.
That's amazing.
And so here are the 9 artists in the exhibition. As you can see, there's an artist from Nigeria, the Netherlands, San Francisco, the United Kingdom, actually 2 artists from the United Kingdom. I'm from Philadelphia. And then this was the real surprise. Gavin Newsom, who is the governor of California, is also dyslexic.
Wow.
He's written several books. He's a real pro dyslexic person, and so he is part of this exhibition as well.
Wow.
So I think it's really important for people to realize that people from all walks of life have this superpower, to be able to see words as visuals, which is something I wasn't even aware of till I started creating artwork for this exhibition. So what they asked was in each of us developing work for this exhibition was to come up with a word that would become part of this dyslexic dictionary. And you can see it ranges from patience to unpacking to disobey, fractal thinking, hyperactivity, superpower. And then my word that kept coming up for me is the word lens. And I always talk about how dyslexia and the work that I do creates a new lens for us to see and understand what we're looking at. And as you can see here, they took things from the actual dictionary. And in this case, lens is a channel through which something can be seen or understood. And with my practice of art science, that's what I do, is use my artwork to reimagine what scientists see and research. And scientists are really fascinated about this because sometimes science can be very myopic. So what I try to do with my art practice is use my work as a way for them to rethink and reimagine what they do. So for this particular project, I had a lot of different routes I could go. And again, I'm creating artwork for something that's on the other side of the country. It's not like a place where I can go and stop in and help with the installation like I usually like to do. I have to relinquish control. And so one of the artists that I collaborate with quite a bit is a very dear friend of mine, Stephen Fowler, who is a British poet. And I met Stephen in 2015 at a conference that we were both invited to attend in Salzburg, Austria, that dealt with creativity. What were the sources of creativity and innovation? And as a result of that 5-day meeting, Steve and I really connected. We both went back to our own countries and we started sending emails to each other because we were both researching the brain and neuroscience. He was artist in residence at Wellcome Trust in London, and I was working at National Institutes of Health as an artist in residence there. And we would have these amazing dialogues. And what was so extraordinary to me is I struggle so much with writing that when I would write to him, and what you're seeing here, these are some excerpts from emails that we send back and forth to each other. My writing became poetic. And I don't know if it's because I was writing to a poet, but I found that when I would write these emails to Stephen, they would be so full of poetry. He was very moved by them, and he's used them a lot in creating poems. And so we've worked on several projects together, which I'll be showing you. But I want you to be aware that in my case, emails were a lens and a catalyst for what I was going to be creating for this project. So this is one of our first projects that we did back in 2015. That's Stephen at the upper left and me at the bottom right. And his poems, what you're reading here, are actually based on email correspondence that we sent back and forth. So what he does, he uses his poetic lens to reimagine what I am sending in my email to him. So our dialogues have dealt with neuroscience, they've dealt with astrophysics. It's really been just so powerful for me how something that I feared my whole life, language, not speaking it, but writing it, now I've become empowered because of my relationship and my dialogue with this poet. So it seemed like the perfect project and the perfect collaborator to work with on this project. So what you're seeing here, this is an installation that I did based on some of our Stephen and my early dialogue called Neurocantos, or Songs of the Brain. And so what you're seeing here is these suspended cones are hand cut out of mylar. I don't use any kind of laser cutter. And they represent the complexity of what's going on in the brain that allow us to know. And then on the circles on the bottom represent patterns and the significance of patterns at both the macro level, which would be outer space and astrophysics, and the micro level, the brain, that one of the things that connects these two spheres is patterns. And that becomes very significant in terms of how neuroscientists do their research and how astrophysicists do their research. Also, as a result of that exhibition, Stephen and I got to collaborate on 2 silkscreen prints. So what you're seeing here, this is one called The Points of Light. And what it involves is a painting that I've done and then fragments of poems that are embedded in these prints. And the idea is to create this dialogue between both the poems that we've created and artwork. And this is a second one called Logue. So both of these relate to our interests and our research in neuroscience. So what I love about the beauty of the internet and emails, it doesn't matter that Stephen is across the pond, as they say in England. We get to collaborate, because of, technology has allowed us this gift of being able to have this ongoing dialogue, even though I haven't seen him in person since 2015. So I wanted to show you that first because my relationship with Stephen, my collaborative relationship with him, will be part of this exhibition. Another part of this exhibition will be the research that I'm doing at the University of Pennsylvania, which deals with curiosity. What goes on in our brain to make us curious? And I've always been a curious person, and I think most people, and that's one of the things that we share with the animal world, because animals are curious as well. And so this group, the Complex Systems group at the University of Pennsylvania, were doing a study about what goes on when people research via Wikipedia. And there are very different types of styles of how people research or are curious. The hunter tends to be more strategic. You go on Wikipedia, you go for what you're looking for, period. Other people in the studies are busybodies. They go and they are looking, oh, here's a link, boom. Here's another link, boom. And then there's my group, which is a very unique group. It's not illustrated here, is what's called the dancer. The dancer is that person who jumps from here and there and everywhere and has this ability in the way their brain is set up or wired to bring it all together. Wow. And that's one of my superpowers, is what I'm starting to realize. One of the gifts that dyslexia has given to me is that gift of being the dancer in terms of how I process knowledge networks over a period of time. And so last fall, I had a big exhibition at the American University in Washington, D.C. called Reveal, the Art of Reimagining Scientific Discovery. And what's fascinating about that exhibition, it was all created during the pandemic, the 2 years of shutdown, because I knew I had a show 2 years running that I needed to get this work done. And I had no idea where we would be with the pandemic, but I had to do it. I also unexpectedly had 2 brain surgeries. And so what's so amazing to me is the human spirit, its ability, and in my case, being so curious to try to understand what's happening, even with a brain tumor, which turned out to inspire a whole body of paintings. But anyway, getting back to this diagram, what you're seeing here is part of that exhibition. It's a data visualization called Sparking Curiosity. And what it's describing is the speech dynamics of my artistic process. So what happened during the pandemic, it actually started before the pandemic, but because of the pandemic, we had to do this via Zoom, is one of the ways I process what I'm knowing is through PowerPoints. And so when I'm developing any kind of artwork, I always like to create PowerPoints because it's a way for me to process what I'm understanding about what I'm investigating. It's also a way I can share it with other people. So during the pandemic, I shared all my knowledge networking for the development of artwork in the show. So what you're seeing here is all the paths of discovery that I experienced in the development of artwork for this show. So what it says here is a circle represents a word describing an idea that shaped my artistic journey. So all these little dots. A line indicates how similar the words were to each other. And the colors represent communities of ideas that are more alike. So these are 3 of the areas that are being covered by this data visualization. This was a huge success. When people go in and look at artwork, they don't usually think about what the artist was thinking about, because the interesting thing about artwork is usually an artist isn't there. But for this exhibition, this particular data visualization was there, along with a dynamic one where you could see it happening in real time. And the whole idea was for you not only to see the artwork on the walls, but to see my process of discovery. And not only mine, but for people to realize that all of us who are curious have a similar path of discovery. So in this exhibition, the curators were very fascinated by this, because part of what I did in the beginning of, our relationship with these curators was to describe this process I had been through almost a year ago. And they were totally fascinated. So for this exhibition, they are blowing up this data visualization to be 9 feet by 9 feet. It's going to be on a wall in the gallery in San Francisco. And it will also have artwork, which you see here. This is artwork, and the inspiration for some of this artwork, some of the knowledge networks that I engaged to create this artwork. So this is going to be one of the pieces, one of the major pieces of my work in this exhibition. I love the fact that this is going to be 9 feet by 9 feet. It's going to be like walking into my curiosity center in my brain. And I want people to just realize how complex the brain is, that allows us to be curious. And I think when you create something 9 feet, I mean, it was like 3 or 4 feet at the gallery. Double that, where it's bigger than life size, I think is just going to be awesome. So this will be one of the pieces of artwork in this exhibition. So one of the things that was of interest to me was, as Steve and I were working on a poem which finished up and was called Kamen's Lens, I was talking to the neuroscience doctoral student Dale about this experience, and he said, well, you know, what might be interesting is for us to work with artificial intelligence. And I said, really? How does that work? And he said, well, what's really great about it is you're a visual learner. And he said, what's interesting, and I never thought about this before, is that when I process information, it's more perceptual than verbal. And he said that I have a very unusual and unique, what he calls a visual spatial imagination. So most people in your audience right now, you need to know that you have a more visual spatial imagination than perceptual, or that's the way you perceive the world, is through visuals. Mm-hmm. So then I started realizing, oh my God, that's true. Because when I read a book, I'm not seeing words. Those words transform into visuals. And I never realized that before until Dale and I started collaborating on this component for the exhibition. And so what he did was he took language that I used for interviews and these PowerPoint presentations where I'm describing the work. And basically what he did was to transform this using artificial intelligence. So what you're seeing here is you're seeing one of the sculptures from that exhibition last year that was inspired by the coronavirus. And it was also inspired not only by the coronavirus, but the sun's corona, because the coronavirus and the sun's corona have this dynamic energy that sort of comes out from the edges. So when you're looking at the sun's corona, solar flares are shooting out in the same way that the proteins in coronavirus also shoot out. And so that was very interesting to me. And it was very interesting to physicists who I shared this with, and to microbiologists who were studying coronavirus, because both of these scientific areas would never think about looking at the dynamics, the physics dynamics of both of these, you know, in different fields. So that was really exciting for me. So what you're going to see here is an animation based on the language I used to describe this. So some guided prompts. For example, in my PowerPoint, I described this as vehicles for discovery, the dance of creation and destruction, an energy dance, and in the style of German zoologist Ernst Haeckel. So this is what this looks like, transformed and interpreted by artificial intelligence.
Wow.
So what you're seeing here is you're seeing my language being transformed into artificial intelligence visualizations. And that was just blew me away. I just could not believe that data from what I was describing verbally could be transformed into another form based on language. And then the last piece that I'm going to be showing today is this poem that Steve Fowler and I collaborated on. I reached out to him early last summer, and I told him about the project. He was very interested because he teaches dyslexic poet students at a university in England, and I love that fact. And I've been very upfront about my dyslexia with him. And so anyway, we came up with this poem, and it's called Kamen's Lens. And what I'm going to show you is what I did was he created the poem based on emails. So what he did was to reimagine fragments of emails that I've been sending to him since 2015 that relate to dyslexia. And so for each page, I created a painting. And so what you're seeing now is taking the language from the poem and the painting and reimagining it with AI or artificial intelligence. And this just blows me away because I love the fact of how dynamic language on a page can be when it is reinterpreted and reimagined through artificial intelligence. And what I'd like to do now is to present the whole poem. It's about 4 minutes. Stephen will be doing the reading, and I just hope you enjoy it and you get as excited about it as I am. So here we go.
Kamen's Lens by S.J. Fowler, with an epigraph by Rebecca Kamen. An awakening seems to occur when presenting scientific findings interpreted through the eyes of a dyslexic artist. Before the word, something so small that we couldn't see, the cosmos personal, the neuronal excitement, random but parallel occurrences on continents seem to be aligning. Revelation seems to be intentions, black holes and growth cones, cutouts reminiscent of the scene, from the finite material of the invisible, the vast and intense motion of complexity, the billions of cells made visible. How ironic, Siderius Nuncius. The invitation seems some type of profound messenger whose potential is of the lens of data, of visual knowing, the translational lens in our body. An inner voice directed me, the expressive drawn lines of trees and shells, a molecular phenomena I have interpreted and transformed. 4 artists of the first slide, the quartet correspondence of consciousness, the quintessential word implying the potential, correspondence in definition of the written word, Brzeska's drawings, the explosion of bullets, the sculpture flare, bullets in relationship to solar magnetic force, each is preceded by a written fragment. We are since that part of the vocabulary. We are my hands. We are the minor major that doesn't require math. We are the child of light that's held. The brain and unexpected difficulty is the story of the table upon which we eat, despite intelligence, motivation, and education. To understand things in relationship to other things, to decode written words or symbols, the occipital temporal lobe just above the cerebellum, disrupted like a distant music, a sound that knew that which was applied to the periodic table. Western cosmology, a garden inspired by the orbital patterns, the 83 naturally occurring elements. A glimpse into the nature of seeds, the notion of a type of neo-theosophy with much gratitude mirrored back through. The evolution of thought as it has been watching, unfolded, nourished by the witness, into abstract form with sculptural structures within the vehicle for processing, the anti-written language and infancy as it continues to reveal.
So thank you.
Oh my goodness. Wow. Thank you so much for sharing this. I am truly speechless by your art. First of all, let me just say that this exhibition is an incredible exhibition and your art is incredibly profound. But I mean, just listening to you talk, you kept saying throughout how your artwork or how you found your artwork in the fields that you were studying with, like that they were incredibly dynamic. But hearing you talk, I think that you're an incredibly dynamic person. It's a marvel to me how you are able to see the world through such a fascinated lens, and I'll use the word lens because that is your dictionary definition. But I mean, every time I heard you talk about how you were relating the fields of neuroscience and astrophysics, which are such enormous fields in and of themselves, and the fact that you were combining them, I kept having like the visualization of like you see the world through a kaleidoscope and you're able to kind of switch the lens of the kaleidoscope back and forth between this macro scale of astrophysics and the micro scale of neuroscience. And oftentimes, I mean, people don't have the ability to kind of change that lens of the kaleidoscope because, I mean, normally people will just focus on astrophysics or just focus on neuroscience. So I just find it so profound and in the way that you're able to communicate your art, I mean, I am truly speechless. This was amazing seeing your process of creation and the way you're able to collaborate with others. And I just love how the whole exhibition is titled The Dyslexic Dictionary because it really shows how complex dyslexia is, which definitely translates into your approach to art, like that approach into the complexity. But I just I am truly speechless. I am blown away by everything you just shared. So thank you so much.
Well, thank you. And I want to thank the curators of the exhibition for this extraordinary opportunity to participate in the exhibition. And it's taken me on just an incredible journey of discovery. And they've been so wonderful in terms of holding the light of possibility. And I just could never imagine um, just the fullness of what I've gotten out of this experience in preparation for this exhibition. And I've been a big person of it's really about the journey. Once you're at the destination, if you think about your life, that's wonderful. But the richness of the destination comes not from reaching the destination. It comes from being on the journey. And as a result of my imagination and my curiosity, because I am dyslexic, to be able to reach out to collaborating partners, a neuroscientist, and a poet to really help me understand and give a voice, a visual voice to what it is like to be dyslexic. In an exhibition is really exciting because I have to understand how everything works. I've never been given an invitation to really focus on that part of my processing before. I create artwork all the time, but no one has invited me to say, okay, you're being invited because you're dyslexic. I want you to figure out a word that you feel summarizes your process of discovery. And in my case, it is lens is that, but it's also what I feel I provide through my artwork to others, is a new lens, whether to reimagine dyslexia, to reimagine the research that one scientist is doing in relationship to another scientist. So
And that is an incredible opportunity because, I mean, oftentimes I feel like it's kind of taken for granted our process of discovery, how we get to a point. I mean, you don't often think how complex the process is for us to be curious, like you were showing with your research at the University of Pennsylvania. So that is such an incredible process to be able to reflect on that because I mean, it definitely gives you a greater sense of appreciation for that curiosity that you have and kind of your mental processes. But it also shows you, like you were saying, what you offer and what you bring to the table because in discovering that you see how unique your process is and it truly is so incredibly unique. And I was significantly impacted when you were talking about how you displayed your art that connected to the coronavirus, but you're able to connect the way that you saw the coronavirus to the sun, which is just an amazing way to be able to see that. And you just that way that your brain works is offers something to the table that is something that might have not been there before. And especially for anyone listening, that is something that you do have to remember. I mean, you might take for granted how you think of information, or if you're not taking it for granted, you might think that this is a common way to perceive things. Like you said in the beginning, you thought everyone struggled with reading, and you thought that this was everyone kind of visualized things in some until someone pointed out that no, this is unique to you and your dyslexic ability. So it's just something to remember that I mean, I feel like we take ourselves for granted a lot and our abilities for granted, but we truly have magnificent abilities like you have been able to express through your artwork. And just so that I mean, your artwork is incredible in the actual art. It's creative and it's beautiful, but it's also so inspirational to me and other people who are watching it because it reminds us of that and it gives such a profound impact.
Well, actually, I just want to bring up one thing that I'm starting to do right now is one of the things that I realized as a result of working on a big exhibition during the pandemic and recovering from brain surgery was that it was my curiosity and my creative process that became almost like self-care. So now I'm getting ready to do a series of lectures in various audiences that is going to address this notion of curiosity and the creative process of self-care. Because I know that there are a lot of students now, because I've talked to a lot of colleagues who are teaching in the classroom, that a lot of students are really struggling with that year and a half to 2 years that have been lost because of the pandemic. And for me, what I've been trying to do is to let people or share with people. For me, my journey, I used it for self-care. I mean, I realized that if I could be creative and engage my curiosity and continue to do my work in the studio and my research, that really enabled me to get through the pandemic and feel very good about it being a profound time of self-reflection. So that's one of the things that I'm very interested in doing now with my art practice. When I get invited to go to schools or scientific communities or other academic communities, is to really make people aware that your curiosity is one of your most profound gifts that we come into the world with. And it's something that can make you see the glass half full or half empty.
Mm,
And you get to choose. I mean, that's the really wonderful thing about us as human beings, is we get to choose.
mhm,
So for any students who might be watching this right now that are feeling, you know, struggling with trying to recover from coming out of this pandemic, I really want them to be aware that to really reflect on that time as an opportunity for self-growth. I mean, what did you learn from that? And how might you engage what you've learned in helping others or creating something that can really help you feel better about yourself?
And I think that is such an amazing way to look at the experience of the pandemic, especially because it's an experience that we all went through. And we dealt with the pandemic in different ways, but it was impactful to all of us. And I mean, that's something that or an exercise that I want to like leave my audience with, because looking and reflecting on the way you learn and the way you process information and your curiosity is truly a form of self-care, because for one, like you were saying, it can help us cope with what we went through the pandemic, but it also can be a self-esteem booster. So for example, when you were talking about how learning about your learning process showed you how influential your visual learning was in your life, I'm assuming that that was boosting to your self-esteem as an artist to show you that you had this superpower. But I mean, this is an exercise that anyone could do, that you can reflect on how you coped with the pandemic, how you managed being in quarantine. So, for example, I gravitated to art and I really expressed myself through art. But then you could start questioning why. Like, why did I start gravitating towards this specific thing? So, for example, in the instance of me gravitating towards art, I felt like I was able to express myself. Then I could ask myself further, well, why can I express myself through art? Well, it's because I'm a visual learner. And it kind of also gets you to that end point or that end goal of understanding more about yourself and the way you process the world, because that can be applicable as a student to your learning process. I know from experience that truly realizing that I learned through visualization really helped me with the way that I study, and I kind of transformed the way that I studied in school. But also, as you showed, it helps with defining your career path or defining success in the career. So, just really analyzing the way that you process information or what you gravitate towards, that is a very important thing to do. And I think that is an exercise that all viewers can do.
Exactly.
Yeah, so I just want to thank you so much again for coming on and speaking with me and my audience and sharing your fantastic project. And if anyone is in the San Francisco area from October to December, you could give the specific dates because I don't know them, but you should definitely look more into stopping by. So if you want to give the specific dates for the exhibition.
Yes, it'll be at Arion Press, which is in the Presidio part of San Francisco. The show will open on October 22nd and it'll close on December 22nd. So it'll be up for 2 full months. You can go on the website, which was at the beginning of my presentation, I believe. Or maybe, Julia, you can send that out to your audience. But the other thing is they're doing a community outreach project, which sounds really exciting, to have the exhibition be a catalyst to ripple out to all over the world. And we can do this now with the internet, the beauty of the internet. And so I really encourage people to go on the website, the exhibition website, and to find out more about that, because I think it's just going to be really exciting. And whoever would have thought that dyslexia would have been this just incredible conduit to all types of people all over the world. I mean, that's the richness of what I'm learning about this superpower that I came into the world with. And I'm full of gratitude to people like you and the curators at the Dyslexic Dictionary for shining so much light on this really unique way of learning. So thank you very much for this opportunity to come and share my work with your viewers.
Yes, thank you. And I hope you have a great rest of your day.
You too. Be well. Take care.